Hi, everybody. We hope everyone is having a good week. We are now resuming Q&A sessions, and we are on Module 5, Week 2. On this module, we're talking about performance-related trauma, which is a big topic in our line of work. And we have gotten two very relevant questions about this topic that we're very excited to answer. The first question is, I have had unpleasant situations on stage and while being creative. How do I know that they are traumatic? Basically, that they count as performance-related trauma. And I think that is such an important question because it touches on, so many therapeutic aspects, but also existential aspects of trauma. We don't have the right answer, so to speak. But what I would say to that is, for those of you who have followed our work for some time now on the platform and on social media, we know that we talk a lot about, what counts as trauma, what is trauma? And we always say trauma is what the nervous system says it is. If your nervous system reacts like it's trauma, it's probably trauma. But we also say trauma is what you as the client say it is. So we could say, take this unpleasant situation that you have had, say that maybe you were on stage and you froze, or you didn't hit one of the notes and felt very embarrassed, or you wrote a song and you shared it with some people, did not receive the feedback that you were hoping for and had a reaction after that. What counts as trauma? I mean, we could look at it from like a sort of like textbook perspective, like, have you felt very avoidant about your creativity after? Have you felt reactions in your body of fear or paralysis or anger? Like what were the reactions in your body after this event when you were thinking about going on stage or sharing your work? Have you had nightmares about it? Have you felt less pleasure around your creativity? We can talk about it in a lot of like trauma related ways. But at the end of the day, trauma is what you say it is. Mm-hmm. So if you feel deep in your heart that this was a traumatic experience for you, even if what you felt after doesn't fully categorize as trauma in the textbook sense, then this was traumatic for you. And it's good to think of it in that way. That's what came up for me. What do you think, Stephanie?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really said it all. I just kind of boiling it down to its simplest form, has it affected you negatively as you moved forward, right? Like you said, has it made you avoid certain situations? Has it made you question or doubt things? Has it made you nervous? Has it given you physical symptoms? Whatever it is, like, we can sometimes get wrapped up in having to, qualify things for like, does this qualify as trauma? Well, if it affected you negatively, I'm kind of like, who cares what it qualified? Like, if it affected you negatively, then it affected you, and that's it. And so, yes, then that was traumatic for you. Like, I have several experiences from my past performance related that, to anybody else, you would say that and they'd be like, oh, everybody makes a mistake on stage. But like every time I think about, like, I used the wrong lyrics. I used the wrong words in this one performance one time. And nobody even like it destroyed a punchline, so the punchline wasn't there, nobody laughed, and then I was like, oh, but nobody would even think of that as a traumatic experience. But every time I think of it, I have this like and yeah, I think it did make me avoid then taking on bigger parts when I was younger after that because of the fear of that. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, if it has affected you in any way, in a negative way, you can qualify that as trauma because it's working against you, you know? I mean, at
Yeah,
least for our purposes, because we're not diagnosing here. We're not,
exactly.
right? So like for our purposes here, has it affected you negatively? If so, yes, give it, honor it in as a traumatic experience, and and then give it the attention it needs.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And when you were talking, I thought of something else, which maybe is also that trauma is something that creates a change in your emotional framework or how you see that situation, that doesn't just as easily go back to baseline like
Right.
any other unpleasant situation does.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. That's a very important distinction. Yeah. It maybe like shifts you to a new normal, or it shifts you to, right, rather than the regular kind of homeostasis. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And you're right. Like, I think it's very important to say, we're not here for the diagnostics. We're here for if this affected you in a way where you feel like you need support.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So thank you very much for sharing that.
We're all about workability. We're all about how can we use these tools to like actually make change in your life,
Yeah.
and to help you. So yeah.
Yeah.
So to not get wrapped up too much in the semantics of like, is this actual trauma? Does this qualify as trauma? Did it affect you in a negative way? And has it held you back in any kind of way? If so, great. Okay. Let's work with it.
Thank you. That's a great
Yeah.
way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the second question we got is very much related to this. I think you really like this. This person said, I have worked a lot on performance related trauma and letting it go. But in my body, I have these reactions on stage. And what do I do about that?
Ah, yeah. Oh yeah, I'm all about this. Okay, so on our live this week, I gave a personal example of my foot shaking at a recital when I was like 12 years old or something, and that was a really traumatic experience for me. Okay, so it's interesting because we can think like, oh, even if you've worked with a therapist or if you've worked on these issues and you've tried to like work through them cognitively, there's still a physical somatic piece to it that's in there. And I think until you work that piece out or work through that piece, um, it'll always kind of be there in your body,
Hmm.
like lodged in there. So I would say, as part of your work, and this is the work that we do, we take it from like a comprehensive lens. But in the work that you do, always integrate the physical piece of the trauma, right? So you might work through a therapist or with us. If you're working with us, then we're doing this anyway. But like, let's say you're working with a different therapist and you're working on, all of the emotional components and everything, but then you don't actually let the body physically express itself in that work, then you're
Hmm.
still going to be holding that stuff in the body. So you might be
Yeah.
able to like think through it, but your body is still holding on to these
Hmm.
kind of somatic things. So make that a piece of it. Make the physical piece a piece of it. Like I did on the live the other day that you were guiding me through. I ended up shaking out the leg, like finishing the
Yeah.
cycle of the shaking. Um, so things like that. I would just say always integrate your body into
Yeah.
the therapeutic process, and
Absolutely.
that will make a difference.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Because we do process information on so many different levels, and we live in a world that tells us to be always rational and always up here. But
Right.
this is not the only place where we process information. And scientifically and anecdotally, we know that now.
Right. Exactly.
If you put your hand on the stove accidentally and your hand retracts, that skips so much of here. And
Right.
yet you have processed very important information that kept you alive from
Exactly.
from setting yourself on fire.
Right. Right.
So yeah, there's so many levels. If your body tells you that something has been unresolved, something is still unresolved there. And it's good to include the entirety of you in that process.
Absolutely. Yep. And as we always say, like there's knowing something here and knowing something here, and they really are two different things. So processing something here and processing something here, and I mean the mind, the body, they're connected obviously, but like you've got to make the body a more kind of intentional part of the process, because once you integrate the body into the healing, some things you can't describe or explain or justify using your cognition. You just have to use your body as a
Mhm.
process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The body tells a story. Well,
Yes,
we know the
exactly.
book by
Yes,
Bessel van der
right.
Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score.
Exactly. Right.
It's true.
Yeah,
It's
it is true.
absolutely true.
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you all. We hope that this has been helpful. If you have any follow-up questions or new questions, absolutely send them our way. And we're here for you, whatever you need. Thank you and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks for joining us.